Hello and welcome along to the Tackling Sport podcast. It's Daniel Hussey here, your host, joined as always by my brother Sean. Sean, we are back for season 2 and we are live now on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter.
Yeah, good to be back. It's been a bit of a break. Good to have a break, but like
Yeah,
everything, it's good to get back on the road.
I take it
And
then, Sean. I take it, Sean, you haven't watched much sport then over the summer. Then, if you haven't been doing the pods, or
no, we've been busy. It's obviously been different with the GA this year. It's all wrapped up. It's funny when you speak to different people. It's funny how different people have different takes on it or whatever. And obviously, we're only halfway through the GA split season. But even other sports, not having a World Cup on this year, although the women's Euros provided a lot of entertainment. And hopefully in the next couple of tournaments, the Irish team can get themselves there. I know they have a big playoff coming up soon. So yeah, it's been an interesting summer sport wise, obviously with golf as well, with everything that's gone on with the Live Tour. So I'm sure that's a podcast for another day. But yeah, no, good to be back.
yeah, we said we'd be back for the Premier League preview, big bumper Premier League preview. So the kind of process and what we're going to do today is season preview. Obviously, the World Cup will touch on that in terms of how it's going to affect the season. We're going to touch on the top 6 clubs. Obviously, the majority of Ireland do support those top 6 clubs and those tuning in. Then it's the infamous 1 to 20. I will hold my hands up with a lot of my 1 to 20 from last season. There'll be no hiding on this podcast, as always. And then we have a special segment at about 10:15. You can check the timestamp in your description if you're listening back on the podcast. FPL special with Ciarán McDermott, who came third in the Tackling Sport Podcast League last year, but more importantly, was a very high finish, and I'll let him fill you in on all that. So all we ask is if you're listening to the podcast, do give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. All right, Sean, it's a season preview, and I guess no better place to start on the Premier League season than the World Cup and what sort of effect that's going to have. Obviously, we can touch on a little bit if you want on Qatar very briefly and the joke of having a World Cup at Christmas, but I guess how is it going to affect a lot of these teams coming into the season?
It's a hard one because when you think about it, it's even hard now to get your head around the fact that it is going to be in December and early November. I know there's a lot of people actually talking more about, say, the EFL cramming in. I think it's 30 games between now and Christmas, which is pretty bonkers. Obviously, there's repercussions all over the show with Champions League playoffs being played at the minute and stuff with a December date. Everything's been completely altered. Obviously, I've never experienced Ireland being at a World Cup, and I can't imagine what a World Cup at Christmas would be like with an Irish side. But no, it is completely different. I think we've seen a few very interesting changes in the Premier League and across European football in general. Um, there's a few bonkers things going on, particularly with what's going on at Barcelona. It's incredible, really, for a club that has been one of the dominant forces, particularly in my lifespan, over the last 10, 15 years, and regarded as such a well-run club with the members and everything there. It's just turned into a bit of a disaster at the moment, and probably a collapse waiting to happen. But the World Cup has changed things, and I think it's going to be interesting because normally in the Premier League and in the Championship, a lot of clubs make their move around November, December, January time. Games come thick and fast if you can get on a good roll, and everything's going to be changed now this year with the World Cup. So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out, and I think it will have a bit of a bearing on the title race and indeed the Champions League and the relegation. I mean, if your star man gets injured during the World Cup, which could very easily happen because it's a quick turnaround, it's exhausting heat in Qatar, so it's gonna be one to keep our eye on anyway.
Yeah, and I guess if you even think of Harry Kane post the Euros last summer, I guess that fatigue, like you mentioned in Qatar as well, there's definitely scope for that if you want to maybe kind of find an angle there in terms of what teams post World Cup. And I guess it maybe makes the start of the season all the more important, Sean. And that start of the season will be held for a lot of teams. We won't maybe deal with specific teams here, but just touching on a little bit of some of the exciting transfer signings. And I guess as summers go, it's been pretty entertaining transfer. A lot of teams like Arsenal, like Manchester City, getting their business done early, both ins and outs.
Yeah, and it's quite the opposite. If it was a World Cup here, you'd see that the deals being done towards the end of the window, but clubs have had a clean run of it. Obviously, and the Arsenal have recruited two big players from Manchester City, and I think there's no doubt there's a consensusness around Arsenal that this year Mikel Arteta really has to progress the team along, because for the last two windows, currently Arsenal are the highest spenders this window. They're the biggest spenders in last year's summer window, so they'll have to see progress. Man City as well signing Erling Haaland. I think that's obviously the big one. They had the marquee signing of last summer, with Jack Grealish. It doesn't look like they're going to get Cucurella. I saw earlier that Chelsea have agreed a deal with him. He's a huge loss for Brighton. He's one of those players that every time you watched him last year, he was outstanding. Um, and obviously it's probably been the biggest window for Irish football in years, with two of our best young goalkeeper, and although we've a plethora of them, but our best, one of our best outfield prospects for years, Nathan Collins, getting a £20 million move to Wolves off the back of a 10-15 million pound move last year from the Championship to Burnley. And Burnley aren't a club who do spend big, but Wolves putting 20 million in a position that they're pretty well stocked in at the moment just shows you how good a player Nathan Collins is, and it's an exciting move for Irish football, because I think he's someone who will go an awful long way. But it's funny, the centre back, if you look at some of the players like John Stones and Harry Maguire, say England's two centre halves, if you look at their journeys, they've gone step by step almost. Obviously, John Stones, I think he was originally at Barnes, he went to Everton and then made the leap to Man City, and he was probably a bit young making that leap. You look at Harry Maguire's route. He started off at Sheffield United. He'd loan spells. He ended up a whole Leicester, then Manchester United. So Nathan Collins is making that progression step by step, and that certainly, from an Irish point of view, is really exciting. Obviously, moved to Stoke, then on to Burnley, and now at Wolves. So you do think in a couple of years' time that move could open up for him, to get to a big club. But he's seriously someone that I'm really interested to see how he gets on now, because when Wolves haven't made too many signings, and when a club like Wolves, who don't tend to spend huge amounts of money, I know they did pay 40 million on 18-year-old Fabio Silva, who hasn't quite worked, but 20 million on a centre half is a load of money, and he's a brilliant player, and he's a good age, and it is great to be talking about a couple of Irish footballers like Bazunu and Collins who've gone for big money and hopefully will be starting players.
Yeah, and obviously, a lot of League of Ireland players starting out in League One, but like that Bazunu, that first team selection, what will it be? One Southampton's game, from the top of my head, I can't remember. I think it's at 3:00. Like 2:00, if you see Bazunu ahead of McCarthy, that's big, because it's not guaranteed that he is going to be number one, is it? Or are you
I
confident?
think he will. Looking at Twitter, and I know he started a good
Yeah.
few of the pre-season games. And listen, you don't pay, I think it was 15 million. Don't pay 50 million on a second choice goalkeeper. It was like when Arsenal signed Aaron Ramsdale for bigger money.
True.
But it's a huge move, absolutely huge move for Gavin Bazuna. And again, you look at his progression. I know he went to Man City, but he had loan spells at Rochdale, and he was very good at Rochdale, but he made a few big mistakes. And when you make mistakes down in League Two, League One, that they really hurt the pocket, especially the fans. And then fabulous last year, League One Team of the Year from Portsmouth. But it's a interesting dynamic making that move along the south coast from Portsmouth to Southampton, two clubs who don't like each other. So I know he got a bit of stick for that, but I'm sure he'll be just looking to get a good run of games, and again make sure he's the starting Ireland number one in the international break in a month or so.
Yeah, I texted you going straight away, going he had to move, didn't he? There was no option. Like, I know,
Well, it was
I
a weird.
tweeted something about Gavin Bazunu at Portsmouth, and I end up picking up maybe 3 or 4 Portsmouth followers. So I'm very Pompey are my League One team, for want of a better description. So I was feeling a little bit bad for them.
But it's a weird one now, because it didn't seem like there was too many other clubs in from, certainly Premier League clubs. And like I said, if you get an offer like that, and Southampton are a club that give youth players a go, and they're an ideal club for progress. You look at some of those players who've gone on to play for bigger clubs over the years from Southampton. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one for Gavin Bazuna. But to play week in, week out Premier League football, it's a different beast. And if you make a mistake, it's shown a lot more than if you make a mistake down with Rochdale or Portsmouth. So it's a big challenge, but he's certainly an unbelievable goalkeeping talent, and I don't think there's many 19-year-old, 20-year-olds better out there.
Yeah, and even the Irish goalkeeping situation, because it is sort of connected to the Premier League. Obviously, Mark Travers coming in. Bournemouth are struggling there already in terms of their many people's knowledge for this season. And even touch on maybe a bit on Kelleher. I guess he's still looking for that club. I know he's injured at the moment, which is why not only he didn't play Community Shield, but that could be holding up his potential loan move as well, which isn't ideal.
Yeah, and I know Klopp was unhappy with the Irish setup. I think he feels that he was kind of misdiagnosed, and they didn't appreciate how bad a knock Kelleher had with the Irish camp. But yeah, I think Kelleher's at the age where he has to go and get 38 games. Whether a Premier League club would take him, if you look at it, I don't know, and that's why it could well be a Championship club or a move to a European club, and I'm sure that's something that Kelleher wouldn't turn down either. But no, it's a bad time of the season to get injured, especially as a number 2 keeper and a young keeper who's looking to get more game time.
Yeah. One more kind of point on the Irish connections before we move on. We get your live chat comments in. I'm sure that there'll be a few comments when you see my 1 to 20, let alone Sean's, and who he's got relegated. But thoughts on Aaron Connolly there? So I guess the people want to hear what your thoughts are on Aaron Connolly. It wasn't on my preview panel here or preview notes here, Sean, but quick brief on his move.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. He gave a very honest interview to Irish Football Fan TV, Paul Neal, and he spoke about kind of getting away from the circle in England, and I don't think it's the worst move in the world for playing Serie B. I think he's with Vinicius. I definitely pronounced that wrong, but it's a good move for him, I think. Look, it's not one that's going to get him back in the Irish team anytime soon, but a chance to learn the culture and find his way, because there's no doubt last year he lost his way, and the loan spell to Middlesbrough at times worked, but it wasn't overly successful, and he wasn't always first choice there. So it's a brave move, but it's easily one that could go either way. So I just hope for Aaron Connolly that he does get back, because he showed at times glimpses for Ireland of that he's got real quality, but it's a long road back if Serie B doesn't work out for him.
Yeah, no, fair play to him for making the move. Go on the Gers. That's a shout out to the Gers women's team winning the junior championship there today. Shout out to all them. Right, Sean, 6 clubs we're going to cover before the infamous, as I keep saying, 1 to 20. Manchester United, your thoughts on Ten Hag and what's going on there, the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, where do we start? I guess the manager's probably the place to start, and maybe touch on a bit on Ronaldo's situation ongoing.
Well, I was actually watching Premier League years the other day, and I didn't actually appreciate how bad United were last year. Like they lost 4-0 to Brighton away from home. And
that was definitely the low point. I didn't realize Premier League years was out for the last season. There you go.
Why I think a lot of people don't remember, I think it was like a Saturday evening game, and Kerry played Cork that day in the football, and Roy Keane was actually I think he was at the Cork and Kerry game on that time or something. But it's just, they really were. I don't think I've seen a club of Man United size make a managerial appointment that just hasn't worked as much as that Ralph Rangnick appointment. And also, I think Eric Ten Hag walked in the door and took one look at Ralph Rangnick and said, "Well, he's not coming with me." Kind of, I know he's got a nice gig with the Austrian team, but it's an interesting one for Ten Hag. It's such a big job, and it's not aided by the fact that for how bad United were last year, they still got was a Europa Conference League, so that is just not adding any help to them. A bit of European football when you could have more time. When you look at everything that's going on with Ronaldo, again, it's not good. The whole De Jong saga, like United have had this ongoing saga for a player. It seems every summer. A couple of years ago it was Sancho. Now it's De Jong. It's just, it's a complete mess. But I do like Ten Hag. He's got a steeliness to him. But like I said, it's all well and good talking a good game. You've got to go in there and sort them out. Like, there is a lot of Man United players that have moved on. Pogba, I think, like, Paul Pogba will go down in history as like one of the most incredible footballers to just do very little in his club career. Like, he's gone from United to Juve, to United back to Juve, and be a World Cup winner. And every time he plays for France, look like he's the best player in the world. Even during the Euros, that Switzerland game, he was making passes in extra time where you were nearly getting off the sofa in appreciation. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see Donny van de Beek spend the end of last year along with Everton, but getting back to Eric Ten Hag might suit him. they haven't really sorted out the right back position. I think that'd be a worry for Manchester United fans with Aaron Wan-Bissaka and you've Dalot there, the centre half pair, and I know they signed your man Martinez, and lot's been talked about his height. What partnership are they going to go with Varane? Does he like Lindelof? Is Maguire a little bit too slow? I think he's kept Maguire on as captain. And then a lot again has been mentioned about Tony Martial's form in pre-season. He's another one that you just look at, and on his day he's unplayable. And then when he plays bad, he's stinks the place out. So I don't know with United. I don't think they'll finish outside the top six. I don't think they'll finish first or second, but anywhere if they get Champions League this year, I think Ten Hag will have done an incredible job. Now, but they are the bad side either. They're not a bad squad, but I think with
No,
what he's inherited, if he gets top four, I think he's done an incredible job, and United will be excited for the future.
yeah, I'd say it would almost be an overachievement, not on based on the squad, like you said, but based on the circumstances that he's picked up the team. But like they knew need that midfielder, and I think it's Young's leading towards either staying at Barcelona or going to Chelsea perhaps, as of Twitter earlier today. So it's not ideal if United spend half the summer chasing him. Just looking at their midfield here, so you got Fred, McTominay, Eriksen, Van de Beek. Like they definitely need another centre mid in there, and if De Jong's not the answer, then I think they might struggle to pick a player up, because it seems they put all their eggs in one basket. And it's as I said, it's a tough one with United. The question, as I touched on earlier, Sean, on Ronaldo and will he stay? We would comment in there, will Ronaldo stay? I guess it's kind of gone past the stage where like he knew full well what he was doing leaving the friendly early over the weekend. Wasn't it Dallo that was with him? I thought that was quite. I think that was quite funny. How if Ronaldo says we're leaving, he might be getting a lift off him or something. But I'm Ronaldo. Like obviously, since he's gone to Juventus from Real Madrid, his goal scoring hasn't stopped. Like he's constantly the top scorer. He's the main man in those teams. That 3 seasons at Juventus and then the season at Manchester United. But the actual performance of Juve in the Champions League, the 3 teams they got knocked out to those 3 seasons, and then United last season. So while he did score 24 goals last season, you're like at some point you got to go. Are the goals worth maybe sacrificing other parts of the team? So I've always been. Yeah, go on.
What it was Ronaldo's brilliance. You think of that Champions League game, was it at Atalanta away, where he just did this for a few weeks in a row, and again it was one of those things where it's like when he scored that goal against Atalanta, it was from outside the box. Like you're off the sofa going, how is this? Like this fella he's immortal. And again I think he got a hat trick. Was against Tottenham. He scored
I
a
was
couple
going to say
Arsenal.
the Tottenham goal outside the box into the Stretford end, or it might have been the other end, but it was spectacular. Yeah,
it's just, and at the moment the whole saga, and we're unsure whether Ten Hag wants him. So look, it's another mess. But I definitely think United fans will be a lot more happier with Ten Hag than Ralph Rangnick. But like I said, you mentioned the midfield, how Manchester United haven't sorted out that midfield, because whether Ten Hag likes Fred or McTominay, for the optics of Manchester United fans going to Old Trafford watching Fred and McTominay, knowing most teams' midfields bullied them off the pitch last year. You take Wolves, for example. Wolves beat Manchester United away last year, and I watched it. And João Moutinho at about 36 and Ruben Neves gave an absolute masterclass. And I think if Wolves' 2-man midfield could do that, I think then Duncan might have been playing as well. How they haven't bought someone in that regard is criminal. And I think come January and February, when there's a lot of games and we learn a lot more after the World Cup, if those two are still starting centre midfield, I think that limits how high Manchester United can finish, because I don't think they're bad players in isolation. I think McTominay's put in good performances for Scotland. He's shown he can play in the back 3. I think Fred at times has been really impressive. He's quite a likeable player in midfield, but the two of them at the moment, they're limited, and you never want limited players, especially in midfield.
And it's gone past the stage where even if the 2 boys in midfield there, McFred play well for 6 games, like it's gone past the stage of repair with United fans. They want to see someone else in there, at least breaking up that partnership. Final thing in United, Sean, I've been banging the Dean Henderson drum for a while, I'm a bit kind of 50-50 on his statement there recently. He said he wasn't happy or he promised this and this. I thought it was a bit like coming from a Dean, speaking as a Dean Henderson fan, I thought it was like, look, he had plenty of chances. I know he had COVID. I saw Danny Mills on TalkSport giving out about him today. I found it hard to disagree with a lot of what he said. Again, despite my allegiance, I definitely think De Gea, like, he was player of the season last year. But like in 2 or 3 years' time, is De Gea going to be the keeper that is going to be there when Ten Hag goes for his title charge in 2 or 3 seasons? Me personally, I think it would have been work on with Dean Henderson. The unfortunate thing for Dean Henderson is De Gea's shot stopping so good that you just couldn't really justify dropping him. But I do think his ability on off the deck at his feet is nowhere near Dean Henderson's. And I think there was a chance for United to make a call in it and go with Dean Henderson and get De Gea off the books before his new contract. But I think that ship has sailed now, and I think they're in massive trouble because isn't De Gea on 200 or 300 grand a week? And funny enough, actually, a lot of United players got 25% pay cut because they didn't qualify for the Champions League, and I think that's kind of a big reason why Forest are able to afford Henderson's wages this season.
And I think with Dean Henderson as well, there was a game he played last season. I think it might have been Liverpool in the Cup, one of those games, and he didn't cover himself in glory. He didn't come out. I think it was Salah came through on goal, and he didn't make himself big, and the goal looked absolutely huge. And I think Roy Keane mentioned it on his analysis. And I think it was a bit harsh on Dean Henderson. But what I would say about Dean Henderson, that interview he gave was very, very interesting. He said how many times he had to bite his tongue. Kind of mentioning the old regime as well with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer post the Euros, which he was actually injured for, Dean Henderson. But I think Dean Henderson's one of them. I don't think he can ever be a number one for a top club. I think he's just got a little bit too much madness in him. I think he's got a mistake in him, and probably similar to Aaron Ramsdale in that regard. Like, I don't think Aaron Ramsdale will ever be a keeper that wins the Premier League, and I think Dean Henderson's just in that bracket at the minute as well, until you show more. And certainly Ramsdale's elevated himself above Henderson in the England pecking order.
Yeah. I guess Dean being 25 in goalkeeping terms is probably 20, 21 in outfield terms. So I know he said no to a lot of loans, which is sort of a bit of a dig at his current loan. But look, we'll see how that progresses. I know I'm kind of banging a loose drum there, but I do personally think United should have given a go to Henderson, like Arsenal doing with Ramsdale. And like you said, Sean, well, I see a lot where you're coming from. I do think you give a player like Ramsdale 3 or 4 seasons on Arsenal, maybe then with a title push and a bit of learnings in that regard.
Well, absolutely, yeah, and keepers learn a lot more at the higher end. I would say it's a good move for Forest. A lot of clubs have strengthened. I know Fulham signed Bernd Leno, which I think is a brilliant signing for them. Can't underestimate having a good goalkeeper, especially down around the bottom. They can win your points very, very easily.
I'm just thinking of where I put Fulham in my 1 to 20. Didn't really pay too much attention to Leno. We'll move on to Liverpool. That's all to come. We won't give away our predictions, but I did have a quick look at your one. Liverpool I personally think are in brilliant shape this season. I'm very impressed with a couple of Klopp's interviews, and obviously you say all the right things, and I probably read way too much into this, but the way he spoke in maybe the first week or second week of pre-season, how that last season is parked, and you genuinely believed in this. So whether you came into pre-season as a player not believing, or you still weren't over that Champions League final defeat or Premier League second, I think Klopp will convince you otherwise. So I really think Liverpool are in for a massive season. Obviously, Mane, and how good does he look in a Bayern Munich shirt? In fairness to him, he looks pretty slick. He's a massive loss. There's no getting away from that. But I think, judging on a couple of the things I've seen in pre-season, I think Liverpool have done well with Núñez and with Diaz having a half season under his belt. Jota's there, Salah. I just think Liverpool are primed for another really, really strong season. I think they'll hit the ground running. And I think it comes 6, 8, 10 games in. I haven't had a proper look at Liverpool's fixtures anyway, that I think they'll be right at the top of the table. I think they're ready to start this season. Fulham away, first game, I'm expecting a massive performance.
Yeah, this is the first year in quite a while that I would have Liverpool as title favourites. I think with City, they've lost a couple of players. Like, City could easily win the league by 25. Well, not 25 points, but they could get into 97, 98 points again. But I just think with Liverpool, there's something about them now. The last couple of years, you think of the 2 key players Liverpool have lost from their best team, that 17, 18, 19 season, Wijnaldum and Mane. how they've managed their exits have been really good, because we knew for a while when Alden was planning on leaving. What did they do? They brought Thiago in. Thiago was at the club when Alden was there, and what they've done is they've replaced Mane. People think it's Nunes that's replacing him. I think Diaz was brought in to replace Mane, because if you watch Diaz, there's so many elements that would remind you of Mane's game. Probably Diaz could be better, a little bit better out of possession. I think that's something that will come. But his electricity, the way he runs, those runs he makes from out to in, I still think he needs that consistency, Diaz, because when he's hot, he's unbelievable. I just think at times he has dropped away from that level ever so slightly, and does tend to get stuck out on that wing a little bit too much, because you never thought that about Mane. You never thought he was kind of hiding out there. But I think Liverpool are on for a good season here. Be interested to see how they bounce back from the heartbreak of last year. They bounced back well from that horror show against Milan a few years ago. I think it was in Kiev. Um, and that was a tough Champions League to lose this year, because you look at how well fancy they were pre-game. The way they lost the league as well, or do you say they lost it because how well City came back against Villa? So it's all up in the air. But I do fancy Liverpool. And Nunes, I watched Liverpool play Benfica. I actually watched it in a Irish pub in Spain, and I was so absolutely enthralled watching Darwin Nunes. And I think Darwin Nunes would be one of those players. If he signed for West Ham and he wasn't playing for Liverpool, everyone would love watching him. He's a beast. He makes those runs in behind. He terrorised that Liverpool defence. He's a little bit raw in front of goal. But he was electric that night in the Champions League. And he actually gave, I know Benfica were nearly out of the time. They got a couple of goals, but at one stage I thought the comeback was on because of how good he was and how many chances he had. So I give Liverpool a really good chance. Salah signing a new contract. That's serious business. And yeah, I think this could be Liverpool's year. And put it this way, Dan, if Liverpool don't win the league this year, that's one title for Klopp since 2015. This is Liverpool's greatest modern team. It's better than the '05 Champions League, miles better than the '05 Champions League team. And you probably have to go back to the '80s with that Liverpool side and the '70s. But this is the best Liverpool team for 20, 30 years, and they've won one title. They need to rectify that, and if they don't win it this year, I think you'll really start to think they'll underachieve. So I think they'll be out for blood, and I think it's theirs.
Yeah, I know they were getting a lot of Liverpool fans were getting a tough time after missing out in the Premier League and Champions League from United fans and everyone but Liverpool fans on that Klopp's record with this team. And I do think that was probably a tad harsh. However, I do kind of agree that this season, if they stay injury clear, it's a massive, massive opportunity. But again, in fairness to Liverpool, they're up against this Manchester City team that have added in like Haaland for 100 million. Jack Grealish is basically his first season. He had a season to dip his toes in the water. What do you kind of make of Manchester City? You kind of touched on that. You wouldn't be surprised if they did well, but I guess you're probably leaning towards the exits. Like I look at, like the fact they're selling these players to Chelsea and Arsenal is kind of maybe in some people's heads saying, "Oh, these aren't good players." This is Gabriel Jesus, Raheem Sterling, like these players, Zinchenko, like these are three of Manchester City's definitely top 12, 13, 14 players of the last 4 or 5 years. So I understand they've got decent money for all three, but I'm kind of shocked at the way they've gone about it. I guess if you're bringing in Haaland, maybe these are the sacrifices you have to make. And as I touched on, Jack Grealish is almost like a new 100 million signing, given that he had time to bet in last season and they still won the title.
Well, I thought one of the most bonkers transfers of this summer has been Calvin Phillips to Man City. I know Fernandinho's gone now. How good Rodri has been and Gundogan's been. Like, is Calvin Phillips going to play? Is Calvin Phillips going to start over 30, 33, 34 games this year? I'd be surprised if he does. With how good Rodri's been. What I think with Man City as well, I think they'll get to a stage where it's again similar to Klopp in the league. I think Pep has to win the Champions League definitely this season. Having spent 100 million last year on Grealish and now 50 odd million for Haaland. So I think they bought Calvin Phillips with the Champions League in mind, similar with that with Haaland. And again, obviously De Bruyne came into his own. I think De Bruyne is their big talisman. I think there's no doubt about that. When he's on form, I don't think Man City have ever, not won and not really competed. And I think he's getting a little bit older now. He'll want to win the Champions League as well. So I think that there's a real move for the Champions League with Man City, and I just think they'll be pipped in the Premier League.
Yeah, it's tough though for a team like Manchester City prioritising the Champions League. You're almost sort of putting yourself under more pressure there. So it's not a case that they can go in and just rest players for all the Premier League games and really focus on the Champions League, because obviously there's way more Premier League games. I'll be interested in how, the likes of Phil Foden, I'm looking at their squad here. Like, you still have De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden, Mahrez, Rodri, Gundogan, Grealish, Phillips that you mentioned, Haaland, Alvarez, and that back four. Like, they'll still be thereabouts. So I'm expecting, given the form of Man City and Liverpool the last couple of seasons, you just can't really make a case for any of the other sides breaking into that top two. But I think it might be a tad closer than it has been in previous seasons. I think every year it's gotten maybe a small bit closer. So we'll see in that front. We'll move on to our beloved Arsenal, Sean. We won't spend too long, but it's been an interesting summer. We are recording this on Wednesday night, probably the biggest 2 days in Arsenal's history since maybe the Invincibles. We've got the Amazon Prime first 3 episodes coming out of the Mikel Arteta documentary, and given the first 3 or 4 clips that have been leaked, it's not going to be boring. I think it's going to be very interesting. Not only the documentary, but the reaction to it, and also then with Crystal Palace away on Friday Night Football. What are your thoughts on the next couple of days, next 48 hours as an Arsenal fan? We haven't even talked about the transfer season yet. So.
Yeah, I think that the timing of it doesn't really sit well with me at all. 2 games before the first day of the season, when you're playing Crystal Palace away, having lost God knows how many of the opening games of the season in the last few years. And I can't remember the last time we won on the opening game of the season. It might have been the Leicester year, the year after Leicester won the league. We beat them 4-3. I think we might have beaten Fulham during COVID, but it's just a mess. I've seen a few clips. Like I said, I don't think it does Mikel Arteta too much harm, because I think it'll show the hand he's been dealt basically over the last 2 years with this Arsenal side. But the end of the season is what I'm worried about. End of last season, watching that, because we fell away and absolutely capitulated, and it's something I think that won't massively. We don't know if it'll massively change for this season, but back in European football for Arsenal, so games will come thick and fast. Look to have a bigger squad. Saliba coming back from his couple of loans, now being a French international. Having watched him a little bit in pre-season, looks the real deal, and he's a player certainly to keep your eye on this year. Interested to see what they do with Ben White and Tomiyasu. I think with Arsenal this year, they need to make sure they don't have as much injuries as they did last year, and I think that will come from rotation and resting players. Obviously, there's a bit of uncertainty still in the midfield, but going forward now with Jesus, Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, they look like the 4, and I think it'll be a successful season for Arsenal if they get top 4. But I think it's going to be a difficult year.
Yeah,
a big one for Arteta.
Yeah, the European football is one that keeps putting me off when I'm confident of a good season. But I'm very excited by Gabriel Jesus. The most interesting fact of the whole summer is he's currently on 73.4% ownership on FPL. And if it stays like that, it is a record, which is amazing. 8 million, it's absolute bargain. And Ciarán McDermott will be in a few minutes to talk us through the FPL side of things. I'm happy enough to move on from Arsenal, Sean, if you are, and we're going to go on to Chelsea. For me, Chelsea, I'm a bit apprehensive about what Chelsea are going to do this season, because it just seems to be the ownership issues. I'm just starting looking at the squad here, right? So I still think that Mendy's not good enough. Well, he's clearly not at Alisson or Ederson's level. So straight away, I'm like, they're not going to challenge for a title with Mendy, irrespective of who they sign. The defense, pretty decent there. But if they get Brighton left back over the line there,
Cucurella.
Yeah, Cucurella, sorry, but Raheem Sterling was a brilliant signing. There's a lot of positives with Chelsea, but I don't know. I have a feeling that the top four could be out of their grasp this season. I really do. I won't give too much away, but what are your thoughts on Chelsea and how they're kind of set up? And interesting, Gallagher, and if he gets a run this season, isn't it?
Yeah, I kind of think Chelsea will have a decent year this year. I think they've actually managed the ownership pretty well, even if it's just in the press. Obviously, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But still being able to sign Sterling, look, 47 million, maybe a little bit high, but you're signing someone who's proven. And Koulibaly's a big signing. Really excited to see him in the Premier League. Every time you saw him for Napoli in the Champions League, seemed like every year they played Liverpool, but Koulibaly always impressed, commanding figure. So I'm interested to see how he gets on. Yeah, and I think Chelsea will have a good year. Look, they have a lot of top players. Like, you look at their starting team. I know you're not Mendy's biggest fan or whatever, but Reece James, Chilwell, get them lads back fit. I know they lost Rudiger. Koulibaly will step in there. Christensen's gone. Um, Thiago Silva's still going at what is he, 38? He's incredible. But you've got Mount. You've got Conor Gallagher to come in. Kante's still there. Jorginho's still there. Kovacic is still there. I wouldn't worry for Chelsea. I think they'll be just fine this year, and I think I don't know if they'll compete for the title, but I think they'll be close.
Yeah, I think they'll be short of the title push myself. They have missed out on one or two transfers, which is I just there's a lot going on with Tuchel there as well. It's a lot to have Lukaku come in last season, be the main man for 6 games, and then it's all kind of rejigging it. But I do actually think Raheem Sterling for that kind of money is quite a good sign. So there is a lot of like pros and cons, and I'm very interested in how Gallagher will get on, because obviously the fact he's not going out on loan, I think that was pretty obvious, but the fact he isn't kind of speaks volumes of what Chelsea want to do with him this season. But finally, on to Tottenham Hotspur, before we get into the 1 to 20. In my defense, on the 1 to 20 prediction last season, which I'll touch on in a minute, where I put them, they were under Nuno Espirito Santos, whereas now they've got Antonio Conte, who I thought would be out of Spurs' reach. And not only have they got Conte, they've built arguably an amazing, exciting lineup straight away on the goalkeeper. At least I can hold on to that. With the Mendy thing as well, I don't think Lloris is good enough still to be, pushing for a title or anything like that. But outside of that, I think the money they've spent, the players they brought in, it's a really exciting time to be a Tottenham Hotspur fan. And I just can't see any reason why they can't finish in the top 4 at least. And then obviously Spurs fan will want them pushing on as close to Man City and Liverpool as possible.
Yeah, I think as an Arsenal fan, I would be worried about Spurs this year. One thing I would say, Champions League football now, they have made some good signings. I think Basuma in midfield, that's kind of gone under the radar because that was kind of done at the end of last season. He'll be a really good player for them. And even signing Ivan Perisic, and I know they got Longley in on loan, and Richarlison, 50 million. I'm not sure about that. He's one of those players that could score 20 goals, or he could score 6. There's kind of no in between when he's hot, he's hot. Jed Spence is an interesting one, considering they're well stocked, and Matt Doherty will be hoping to, after his injury, to get back in there. Well, no, I would be worried about Tottenham, and I'd be more worried about them in the Champions League, thinking they could go far.
Yeah, and you still have Harry Kane, Son, like you mentioned, even Perisic. There's a really good squad there, and hopefully Matt Doherty has a big season for Tottenham. It seems by Conte's quotes that it's going to be Doherty and Perisic as his 2 wing backs. I don't think Doherty's quite there yet in terms of fitness and a few other things. He mentioned the same for Perisic, but I reckon after 5 or 6 games, it'll be the 2 boys from there on in. So hopefully Matt Doherty gets a good 30 plus games under his belt, because he's very much needed for the Irish team. Right, Premier League 1 to 20, Sean. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You go first. I'll get mine up here.
Right, so I just want to get last season predictions out of the way. I was very close to absolutely nailing it, because when I said Liverpool to win the league last season, I was getting a lot of pelters coming in. I think I did okay overall last season, aside from the Tottenham finishing ninth. Do you know the worst thing about Tottenham finishing ninth, Sean, was I think James Mowat. If anyone wants the clip, they can go to James Mowat on Instagram or anywhere else, and he'll send you me picking Spurs ninth. But I think the worst part of picking Spurs ninth was I think I put Villa, Leeds, and I'm going to say maybe Everton ahead of them, or it was maybe two of those three clubs out of there. So it was what was around the clip as opposed to Spurs with Nuno in there. But I'll show you what I've got. Coming up here now. So Premier League 1 to 20. I'll zoom in a bit more so we can go through it, right? Right, we've got Liverpool. They're going to win the league. I really like what they've done with the new signings. I think Jurgen Klopp's built possibly the best squad. I think he has built the best squad in the league now that Manchester City have sold a couple of those. There's quote-unquote squad players. And like a good point you made about Man City focusing on the Champions League, that I do think that Liverpool's all eggs will be on this Premier League basket. And I think they'll get off to that flying start. And given it's a World Cup in the middle of the season, that's going to mess everything up. I think Liverpool, if they have a 5 or 6 point lead, then they'll win the league. So I think a massive price of whatever they are, I think 3-1 at the moment is a really good bet. Manchester City will finish second, and it will be a close fought title race. And unfortunately, I'm going for Tottenham Hotspur to finish third, a full 6 places ahead of where I thought they finished last season. But not to labour too much, they've built an incredible squad. Antonio Conte is amazing. So yeah, Arsenal at fourth. Instead, perhaps.
I think you might be muted there, Dan. Maybe I'll run through some of my team. I've kind of, you have it there, Dan. Yeah, I've gone with Liverpool to win the league. I think, as we said earlier, they look like they've got all their eggs in a row, and they look like they're gonna go for home. I've City second. It'd be interesting to see with Erling Haaland, Dan, what way it will work for him. I know he missed a couple of chances in the Community Shield, but I'd be more happy that he had the chances if I was a Manchester City fan. He had 3 really good goal chances, and if he's able to get 3 against that Liverpool side, I'm sure he'll be able to get more against weaker opposition. I've Chelsea third. I think Chelsea will be fine this year. I know there's a lot of speculation about the owner. And then unfortunately I've Spurs on fourth. To be honest, I think fourth, fifth, sixth is a bit of a toss-up between United, Arsenal, Spurs. It could go either way for any of those 3 sides, but that's the order I have it in: Spurs, Arsenal, Manchester United.
Yeah, if you can hear me all right there, I'm going to go back to...
I think it might be gone again there, Dan. I just might roll down to mine. And look at it. With Leicester at the minute, Leicester are one of the more interesting teams this year. They haven't signed anyone. They look like they're going to lose at least Kasper Schmeichel. Could well lose James Maddison. So that's certainly something that I think, as a Leicester fan, you'll be a little bit disappointed with if you do lose Maddison. But no European football for them this year. It's a bit of a big season for Brendan Rodgers. I've gone with Newcastle 8th. Certainly the way they finished last season was very, very impressive. They haven't signed too many big players. I know Sven Botman from Lille, the centre half, he's in. But Bruno Guimaraes last year, he's one of my players to watch this year. He was outstanding. That Arsenal game, he absolutely ran the show. And West Ham and ninth, they spent 30 million on Samaka up top. They spent another 20 odd million on a Moroccan player, which I can't pronounce his name. It'd be interesting to see for West Ham. I think with Declan Rice there, I think they're still in for a good season. And to include my top 10 of Wolves. Wolves is an interesting one. Wolves could go either way, I think, under Bruno Lage. They don't tend to score a whole heap of goals. They haven't made too many big signings. I know they brought in Nathan Collins. Wang has completed his deal to a permanent. But that rounds off my top 10. We just look at my 11 team. I've Aston Villa. We might go to your team now, Dan.
Yeah, if you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's sharing the screen is a disaster. But yeah, so 5th is Chelsea. I think they'll be very close with Arsenal. I think Arsenal, as I mentioned, Gabriel Jesus' goal will just about fire them into the top 4. Manchester United 6th. I really wanted to be controversial here and throw them out of the top 6. But you're looking at their squad, they're just too good for not to finish in the top 6. But I just think it'll take a while, even if Ten Hag hits the ground running with Manchester United, that it'll just take too long. And there's too much to do with that United squad to compete with that top 5. So I think they'll be 6. I think West Ham have been sort of forgotten. They won't have European football this season. So there's a massive opportunity for them to really give the Premier League a good go. And I think even that home game against Manchester City, first game of the season, I really fancy them to get something out of that game. Just they've really built a fortress there, and I really think West Ham will kick on. Newcastle, they're kind of like where Newcastle's going to finish. I think somewhere like 8th is a really good season for Newcastle, obviously, given what they're doing, but they haven't like completely broken the bank and signed 7, 8, 9, 10 players this summer. So I think 8th place, solid season. They'll build and really, really push for Europe the following season. Brighton, they're my team that I really think they'll do well. I think 9th place for them is massive. I think Graham Potter is a fantastic manager, and he'll kick on with this Brighton team yet again. They have a tremendous record away from home last season. They need to kind of turn some of those draws into win at home, and I think they'll be a solid 9th place. Leicester City, you touched on a lot, Sean. 10th place for me, given they're losing Schmeichel, and while Schmeichel as a goalkeeper hasn't been the best the last couple of seasons, that presence in the dressing room, they'll miss big time. Aston Villa, 11th. Jury's still out a bit on Steven Gerrard as a manager in general for me. But that Villa squad they have is amazing. So while I don't think they'll be in trouble or anything like that, 11th place, given that limitations of Gerrard, perhaps will be 11th place. Notts Forest is a team I have, or Nottingham Forest I really should put in there, are a team that I have very high. I have the very sort of Brentford vibes off them, and Steve Cooper's a tremendous manager. Everton for me, 13th place. I do think there's a good enough feeling in Frank Lampard and with Everton fans to kick on and have maybe a good start to the season. But I do ultimately think Lampard's limited. So as a manager, and the squad is also limited. But why I didn't have Everton down towards the relegation zone was Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I think him being back is amazing. I know he's got a knee injury and he's out for the first game of the season. But if he gets 20, 30 games under his belt, they'll be safe. Crystal Palace 14th. Yeah, for me, they'll be fine, safe, but I won't have them any higher given Conor Gallagher is a massive loss for them, but I do really rate Patrick Vieira as a manager. Wolves, I don't have them as high as you, Sean, 15th for me. I think they struggled towards the end of I'd say they're just missing something there with Wolves. I can really see them having a sort of second season syndrome under Bruno Lage, so I think 15th place for them. Southampton, you just don't know with Ralph Hasenhüttl and where they're going to finish. He could leave halfway through the season. There's a lot going on. They've had a poor preseason, so 16th place. I think they'll just stay up. I know too many Leeds fans to relegate them, so that's why they got the nod ahead of Brentford, who I do think are kind of really have my second season syndrome alarms ringing here, because if you look at that, what really kicked them on from January was Christian Eriksen, and they obviously lost him. I really like Ivan Toney. I really like Mwembo and a lot of their players, and the manager as well. But I do think they'll struggle and just about go down. Fulham, outside Bernd Leno, I think they'll struggle. Leno actually is a brilliant shot stopper. He's perfectly made for a team like Fulham. I think ultimately they'll struggle. And then Bournemouth, they haven't signed any players really, and I think they'll be bottom of the season. So yeah, Sean.
Yeah, I'll just run through the bottom half of the table for me. In 11th, I've Aston Villa. I was actually speaking to Aston Villa fan Andrew Blair White, favourite on the podcast. He was a little bit concerned with Gerrard raising expectations so high, but they made a couple of big signings. Diego Carlos coming from Sevilla, who's been linked with plenty of Premier League clubs in the past. He'll shore up that defence. Tyrone Mings has been relieved of his duties as captain, which is another very interesting one. Gerrard not afraid to make the big decisions, and of course he knows all about captaincy. In 12th, I Palace. Yeah, it'll be an interesting year for Crystal Palace. I think they've brought Sam Johnson in, which is a good move in goal, because at times they chopped and changed a bit with Guaita and Jack Butland last year. So I think Palace are on for a good season. They have kept Eze and Elise to go with Zaha. I think they'll be a good season. Palace 12th again. Southampton, an interesting one. I have them in a 13th. I know at the end of last year, Southampton fans were rather fed up with Ralph Hasenhüttl. So it's a big year for West Ham, or for Southampton rather. And I think it might be a little bit high at 13th, but they have signed Joe Aribo, who has been so impressive for Rangers, and I know he scored a brilliant goal in pre-season. 14th, I have Everton. Could go either way. Do think Dwight McNeil and Tarkowski are good signings for Everton. I know McNeil scored 2 in a friendly at Goodison the other day. 15th, I have Brentford. Well, I do agree with you, Dan. They have made a couple of really good signings. I think signing Ben Mee from Burnley at the end of his contract for free, that's a really good signing. just someone you kind of want around the club. They have signed talented fullback Aaron Hickey from Scotland, from Bologna in Italy. I know Arsenal were linked with him, and they have brought in Keane Lewis Potter from the Championship in Hull, who's someone, an attacking player, might give them that little bit of impetus in the absence of Christian Eriksen. And you look at the last player to make that move from Hull to the Premier League was Jared Bowen. So hopefully the form lines are good for Keane Lewis Potter, who's a really, really good player. 16th, I Fulham. I just take Bernd Leno. And the way they ended last year, I know Carvalho's gone to Liverpool, and the likes of Harry Wilson. I think it's now or never from Fulham. If they don't stay up this year with how well they did in the Championship last year, you'd be getting worried. Excuse me. 17th are Leeds. Hard to know. I think there's a lot of variables going on, but I think they'll just stay up. I don't know if it was their brilliance that kept them up last year, or did other teams falter? Did Burnley falter slightly? In another parallel universe, I think Leeds would be in the Championship and be in dire financial states. I've 18th. I'm Brighton. I know you had them higher than. I'm just slightly worried for Brighton. They lost Bazuma. It was a huge player for them. I just don't know with Brighton. I think they're due a bad season, and if they lose Cucurella as well, huge loss. Forest in 19th. I don't know. I don't know with Forest. I just think they could be anything this year. It's such a difficult place to go, the City Ground. I would love if they stayed up. I really would. So I'm kind of putting them in there in the hope that they don't finish there.
Nah, no. Ben Walsh isn't happy with you. Don't think Forest will
Yeah,
be anywhere near 19th.
it is hard. What I would say about Forest last year is they had so many loan players in the Championship. So they Garner in midfield from Manchester United, who was really important for them. They Jed Smith, who was on loan. There a couple of other players. They've lost their keeper Bryce Samba, who is probably a blessing he's not playing in the Premier League because he's an out and out head player.
Yeah.
It got them to the playoff final, but nearly caused a brawl in their game against Derby. I mean, it's probably a blessing he's not in the Premier League. It's hard to know with Forest, and I think the whole Jesse Lingard, Dean Henderson thing could go either way. But I do like Steve Cooper. You know that, Dan. I've liked him for a long time. I liked him when he was at Swansea, and I'd love if Forest stayed up. And Bournemouth 20th. Hard to know. They have a lot of really good players, but they've let a couple go. And I know they signed Tavernier from Middlesbrough, but I think it'll be a long year for Bournemouth. And it's not. What I would say is what Forest is saying with Grace is the City Ground's a tough place to go. I don't know if you could say that about Dean Court or the Vitality Stadium as it's called. So I think it'll be a long year for Bournemouth. And it's actually a really funny one that Scott Parker was the Fulham manager the last time they were in the Premier League. Left them at the start of last season to join Bournemouth. The two teams both go up. So there's a bit of needle when it comes to them and who will finish higher. But what I would say as well for Fulham, Marco Silva's a pretty good manager and he's got experience at the league.
Yeah, that's your 1 to 20, Sean. Liverpool, City, Chelsea, Spurs, Arsenal, United, Leicester, Newcastle, West Ham, Wolves, Villa, Palace, Southampton, Everton, Brentford, Fulham, Leeds, Brighton, Forest, and Bournemouth to go down. And my 1 to 20 is Liverpool to win the league, Man City, Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, United, West Ham, Newcastle, Brighton, Leicester, Villa, Forest at 12th, Everton 13th, Palace 14th, Wolves 15th, Southampton 16th, Leeds 17th, and Brentford, Fulham, and Bournemouth to go down. So similarity-ish, but yeah, go on.
I think the two big ones are you've Brighton in 9th and I have them getting relegated, and you've Forest in 12th and I have them getting relegated. So that's the big one. We'll wait and see. One of us probably will be right, and one will probably be wrong.
Sean, we're going to bring Ciarán in here now shortly in about 1 minute for FPL. I know I put a few categories in, but we're running out of time, Sean. The ones to watch sort of category for me, it's Dominic Calvert-Lewin at Everton. Really disappointed now this morning with that news of the knee injury. So I have a big asterisk on that now, but I did my research this morning, so I'm going to stick with Dominic Calvert-Lewin to watch. And perhaps Conor Gallagher, and a team to watch with Palace is how they respond without Conor Gallagher, because for me, he was unbelievable last season. He was absolutely incredible. And to miss out on a player like him and not be in your squad is huge. But yeah, very briefly, Sean, on a player to watch perhaps, and maybe a talking point to watch for the season.
I think one of my big signings to watch is Koulibaly. I mean, we've been wanting to see this guy in the Premier League because he's done it so well for Napoli, and it was a big move leaving Napoli at that stage of his career. Also, Darwin Núñez, I really liked him the time I saw him in the Champions League. And from an Arsenal point of view, I think Saliba, I think now 21 years of age, full French international, very, very highly rated in France. And of course, from an Irish point of view, it has to be Nathan Collins and Gavin Bazunu. I think 2 big years for them would be brilliant because they will be the mainstay of any Irish side the next 10 years.
Right. We're delighted to welcome for the last 10, 15 minutes of the podcast, Ciarán McDermott. Ciarán McDermott, how are you?
Good afternoon, lads. How are things? Thanks very much for having me on.
Jeez, that went way too smoothly, didn't it, that entrance? I've been nervous about that all day. Right, Ciarán, firstly, tell us a little bit, right? Now, I told Sean that, no one had approached us about who won FPL, but we actually got a message in our message request back in May for who won the FPL. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I have responded. He will be getting a Premier League jersey of his choice and an appearance on the podcast if he wants. But Ciarán, you did finish third in the Tackling Sport League, but tell us a little bit about where you actually finished overall.
Yeah, I had a bit of a historic run, I suppose, by my own standards last year. I finished global rank overall 2,636 in the world. I was top 100 in Ireland. I think I'm 60 odd in Ireland. Top 1K for I think 8 weeks or so. Fell off slightly towards the end. But I think I got about 90% of 50-50 decisions right. I got a bit of luck. Invested way too much time in it. And I'm going to do it all again this year.
Well, when you say time, right? So first of all, amazing. So I think that stands out. So 2,000 in the world, essentially 2,300 in the world is your overall rank. That for me is the one to stick out because I know how hard that is, and there's like 8 million players now. But what sort of extra little bits were you doing? Like, did you start the season with sort of, predicting your first 6 lineups or first game weeks, or how did you go about it?
Yeah, a little bit like that. I think the key difference this year to other years for me was I built a bit of a spreadsheet so I could track my own FDR, fixture difficulty rating. So I could see what my team would look like in kind of 8 to 10 weeks time. And then I also ranked my own fixture difficulty rating. So, if you go into the FDR in Premier League, in the Fantasy Premier League app, it would give you certain things like, Bournemouth away are a green City at home are like a green for someone when they shouldn't be. So I kind of hacked that myself and gave my own kind of ratings so I could see it in advance. And the other thing is I suppose diving into the XG a little bit. So understat.com was a bit of a hero for me. It gives you all XG ratings and XA, expected assist ratings, and you can kind of filter that and look at the last 6 games and look at XG per 90. So I spent way too much time on that as well.
Sean, your thoughts on that? It all sounds fairly complicated to me.
Absolutely bonkers, yeah. No, I like at times I go through stages of remembering fantasy football. Like, it's probably gonna be a good thing this year that there is there's no kind of massive Christmas games to disrupt the flow. But last year, COVID destroyed me a couple of times with those cancellation apps, and that was kind of threw the towel in. And that's pretty impressive, Ciarán. I know fancy Premier League's taken a life of its own in the last 4 or 5 years. I know there's Twitter pages devoted to it.
Hundreds of like I've literally said, there's probably at least 15,000 content accounts that are just pumping out content on FPL, which is crazy. I think it's important to not pay attention to a lot of them. I think you got to have your own ideas. You can't just be taking tips off everyone.
Yeah, it's like the old horse racing betting and tipsters like Andy FPL. I've told you he was my guy for the year. The lads will come in roaring, laughing when they see me on a Friday evening watching Andy FPL because the deadline's tomorrow. I disagree with a lot he says, but it's all you hear where he's coming from. But you're right, though. You kind of go down the road then of blaming Andy FPL as opposed to yourself. And I think building your own. So what would you say underscore.com was that the
understat.com, and then you can click FPL and then you can filter it all. But I'd say if there's one content creator to follow, it's a lad called Big Man Bakar. And he's an Indian fella, and he just releases this thread on a Friday or the day before match day, and it's just straight facts. Like, it's just XG, it's all the stuff you need to know. It gives you the considerations, it gives you the key questions, no messing to it. He's the best. Big Man Bakar.
Yeah, that's it, right. So I think everyone listening is like, brilliant, well done last season. But we want to help on our fantasy team, and this is a great time to launch the new FPL League. Same prize as usual, the Premier League jersey of your choice. Doug Bell has a Manchester United jersey because of it. But Ciarán, we're going to take it. You sent me a screenshot of your team earlier. I'm going to have to zoom in a lot more than I thought I had to. But yeah, talk us through what you've gone with so far. This is your starting 11.
So I'm probably about 90% set on this. The thinking and the logic behind it at the moment is big at the back, allowing myself a bit of flexibility to sell down any of those premium defenders for a mid-price midfielder. The likes of Phil Foden, 8 million, Bowen, 8.5 million, Luis Diaz, 8 million. If any of those guys go off early doors and they just become essential, I'll probably do Cancelo to Nico Williams, save myself 3 million and sell either Neto or Bailey. But big at the back, I think. So maybe goalkeeper to start with. I've got Raya for Brentford. That's mainly a cost decision. There's kind of an interesting thing happening. There's like once a year, there's always a player who's massively undervalued. So 2 years ago, it was Stuart Dallas. The year before that, it was John Lundstram. And they shouldn't have been at the price point they're at. So everyone had them, everyone got loads of points off them. This year, it could actually be Danny Ward with the sale of Kasper Schmeichel, or the impending sale of Kasper Schmeichel. And then there's another fellow, Iverson. So I think I've never heard of Iverson. I don't know if he's played much. But it's between them for a 4 million starting goalkeeper for a mid-rate defense, but they'll be pretty strong and they'll have some good fixtures to get clean sheets. So that's a really interesting dynamic that's happening at the moment. So Danny Ward is definitely keeping an eye on Brendan Rodgers. I think Brendan Rodgers is siding for Ward at the moment as a first choice, but he has to be Everton's team as a first step, definitely. So him as a first pick. The defenders kind of pick themselves. These are kind of the most explosive assets in the game are Reece James and Alexander-Arnold. The one thing that could change my defense is if Reece James flips to right centre back. It's just a completely different ballgame if he's there. At right wing back, he is their best player. I think he's one of their attacking forces. He's always getting them in the box, getting goals, getting assists. And with that, if he gets one assist, he gets a clean sheet. That's 9 points. He usually, if he's on 9 points, he'll get the 3 bonus points for having a clean sheet and an assist. So he's just super explosive. Same as Trent. With Liverpool and City, they obviously picked themselves, but they've also got a really good fixture run early doors. Last year, I think City started with 4 straight clean sheets, so you wouldn't bet against them to do that again. So just taking advantage of early fixture runs with Liverpool and City is kind of a must for me at the moment.
Okay, so moving on to the midfielders and then the forwards, I guess.
Yeah.
Salah's a non-negotiable.
What I would say, Dan,
what
I would say is it's my biggest pet hate. How is Mo Salah a midfielder? It drives me up the wall.
Yeah, no, it is silly.
It actually ruins fantasy Premier League.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Like he gets a clean sheet point that he's got absolutely no right to, and an extra point for a goal. So now you're right, definitely. Havertz this season has changed from a midfielder to a striker, which maybe is a little bit more justified. But Salah, yeah, he should be a forward really.
And before you move on, Ciarán, so Sean, I don't know if you've set up your fantasy team yet, but if you haven't, you're in for a shock here. The shock I got was Ivan Perisic being a defender. I guess he is going to play wing back, but come on, like.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have him in your team, Ciarán. I was surprised.
No, he's honestly on a mission. Yeah, I do rate him. The concern I have is the stats around his season with Inter, where I think only finished 90 minutes, something like 50 or 60% of the time. He was whipped off a lot of the time. He's 2 years older than that now. 5 subs, and Spurs are just so well stocked in that wing back position. Like Doherty's incredibly explosive. Emerson Royale, obviously they've signed Spence and they've still got Ryan Sessegnon, and so they're just really strong there. So there's a slight question mark there. Having said that, if he bags an assist the first game week, I'll probably swap him in for someone. But I'm 90% sure I'm not going to start with him.
Okay, I'm tempted now. I don't think I've Cancelo in mind. I'll show you mine before the end. But yeah, midfield. So you've gone strong in the defense. Because, like you said, a clean sheet assist. But talk us through the front 5 there. Yeah,
Salah picks himself, obviously. He's a perennial captain for the first, you can probably even say 5 weeks. Haaland be captain week 2, but other than that, I don't see the armband being lifted from Salah for a long time, for obvious reasons. Martinelli then is an interesting one. It's a bit of a punt. He is got a high expected ownership. With ESR only playing, what did he play, 45 minutes all preseason? He looks good for a starting spot. He's been trending really positively ever since he's joined Arsenal. Of the underlying stats, obviously Saka is more productive, and the XG and the XA says that about Saka. But barring everyone else, Martinelli is basically the most productive, and at 6.6 million price point, he's a really good option. If he plays 90, which he should. So no, I think he's a good option definitely for the mid to low price point midfielders. Same story with Neto. Obviously with Jimenez out, it looks like he'll play out of position further forward. Gone really well in pre-season, only 5.5 million, so he's a massive enabler to stock up with the lads, to give you the funds to go big at the back, basically, to have Neto in your starting 11 or at least on the bench. The next, I think the key decision, and it's probably a key decision for a lot of people, it's Haaland versus Kane. They're both the same, 11.5 million each. I've gone with Haaland. I heard you mention, Sean, earlier, the XG for the Community Shield was 1.58, which is a haul. Like, that's, Son would score 3 goals off of an XG of 1.58. So I'm massively excited about, like, there's a fixture against Bournemouth week 2. If you don't have Haaland for that fixture, you're massively vulnerable because his expected ownership will be over 100%. That means people will be captaining him to bring that over that. So if he bags 2 against Bournemouth, you're losing hugely. Even if he doesn't and Kane does, you won't lose as much. But it is Kane versus Haaland, definitely. And I've gone with Haaland on the strength that Kane has a more difficult fixture on early doors. He doesn't traditionally start too well. I wouldn't be concerned if I did have to bring in Kane early. But yeah, toss of a coin really. But I've gone with Haaland over Kane just for that 1.58 in the Community Shield really, and for Bournemouth week 2. Jesus, then, yeah, really excited. His expected, I think he's one of the highest owned players in the game, Jesus. Something like 6%, 8 million, which is quite high. But I'm excited to see what he can do from there on the strength of Nketiah's performance at the latter stage of last season, where he was actually going really well. To have an out-and-out striker there, especially at his level, I think he'll be a really productive asset this year in fantasy. So he should be in most people's teams, to be honest. And if he's not in your team, you're quite vulnerable if he hauls. Bench then, Leon Bailey. So Gerrard's been he's heaped the praise on him, really. He's played really well in pre-season. He is a punt. There's a chance that I sell him down for probably something like Jacob Murphy, who's $500,000 less than him, and maybe upgrade Raya to Ramsdale, because I like Arsenal's early fixtures as well from a clean sheet perspective. So, but Bailey's a bit of a punt. Andreas Pereira, 4.5 million. Again, he should be in your team. He picks himself. He's going to play very far forward. He's cheap. He'll probably rise in cost very early, so I'd get him in. And the same for Greenwood. It's mainly on the back of Jesse Marsh's comments, where he's talked a lot about Greenwood playing in different positions. They've obviously lost Rafinha and they've lost a couple of other people without bringing in huge amount of talent up top. So he'll play a bigger part this season, and he's 4.5. So he's a massive enabler too. So I think if I was to give anyone tips on bench, I would say Ward definitely, or Iverson, depending on what Roger says, and then Greenwood definitely too.
Yeah, and you've gone so cheap on the bench. I think people sort of try sometimes to pick a really good squad, but that's no good to you. If 11 players are fit, you got to pick them. Like, so.
Fair enough.
And on the Haaland Kane thing, I'll show you first of all, that's really good stuff. If anyone didn't appreciate what it takes to finish just outside the top 2,000 in FPL, now you know. This is what I've got on my squad at the moment, Ciarán. See, my Arsenal bias comes in. I know Zinchenko isn't. I'll zoom in there a bit, but I know I've lost there for a second, but I'll get up. I know Zinchenko's probably not the play at the moment. But I just thought at 5 million he was a good one to bring in. But I guess now I've kind of like priced myself out of Cancelo. But sorry, I got my team up here now. 2 seconds. But I actually went with Raya as well. Your kind of initial thoughts looking at the team here.
Yeah, Grealish is a point. I don't mind it. But Grealish is the one that definitely stands out. It's because you have to look at, I think for me, the most important thing is expected minutes. If your expensive players are only playing 60, 70 minutes, it's not worth it.
True.
You captain them basically. But with Sterling going, with Jesus going as well, obviously there's a massive void there. So I would of the City attackers, definitely Foden for a big year. I think will be the most productive. Grealish could do the exact same. What's Grealish 7? I haven't actually considered
seven. He stood out. I can't get it out of my head in a game in America or wherever city where Grealish crossed the ball to Haaland, and I went, that's the season, like that's the whole season. Grealish to Haaland. Now there was 3 other players behind Haaland, and it was terrible defending, but I always like taking a small bit of a punt, and I thought maybe Grealish, yeah.
I like that.
It's very differentiated. I know he's very low. Sorry, something we said covered the pod, Ciarán, just so you know, Jesus is 73.4%, which if it stays the same is the highest ever.
That's huge. Yeah, wow.
But someone like Grealish, for example, is 4.6. So that's what I was kind of thinking.
Fair
enough. Off the back of what you said about Perisic, to be honest with you, I think that'll be upgraded to Cancelo, for sure. But there's not a million miles difference. I really wanted Odegaard, but I did, like you said, I think ESR has got very little time in preseason, so Martinelli's kind of got that gig, hasn't he?
I don't like Odegaard's price point this year. I think he's overvalued. Is he 6.5? Yeah, he was 5.5 last year, and I think that was all right for some game weeks. But 6.5 is too much. He plays too deep for that, especially compared to Martinelli. And the underlying stats, Martinelli is way more productive from an XG standpoint than him. So Odegaard shouldn't be in anyone's team. No, I do like Zinchenko. I think as long as Arsenal can keep those clean sheets early doors and he can get forward, definitely. And yeah, like you said, 5 million is a good price point for him. Perisic, I'm just so torn. It's such an interesting one. It could really go either way. He's only got to play 58 minutes for him to get a clean sheet points, so he should clear that even if they plan to rotate him. But he could be the player of the season because 5.5. If he turns out to get the assists that people are talking about and the clean sheets and the bonus points, that'll be a huge bargain and it'll change very, very quickly.
And thoughts on Luis Diaz?
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
No, I do like that. 8 million is not too bad. Again, that's kind of like the mid price. No, I think if people are looking to get, it's not so much of a punt considering 22%. I like it. I'm a bit concerned about the Darwin factor, that it's just basically the chances that all these guys can't score all these goals. So, when Salah's firing, he's going to command the majority of the ball and the majority of the chances. Obviously, if they win 4 or 5-0, they'll all probably chip in. But yeah, it's just the space on the pitch, really. It's just everyone can't be productive for the one team. And I like Darwin Núñez after seeing him in preseason a bit more. I think he's going to command a lot of space. So I don't know if Luis Diaz will be so much of a factor in it. Hopefully.
Cool. Any final thoughts? First of all, this has been brilliant. The season ahead, where it all went wrong for me was Mo Salah's minion goals. He got an Old Trafford, and I captain Harry Kane, who came off injured or something. Definitely only got 1 point. I'm 90% sure of that. And when you've lost that Salah captaincy, you just got to try and differentiate yourself in my head. So I honestly think I ended up outside them. It was terrible. But I got off to such a good start, so it was really frustrating there. What's your advice to anybody playing who wants to give it a go this year? You touched on a lot of it, but maybe 1 or 2 kind of pointers.
Yeah, there's definitely, so there's a stat that comes out in the lead up to most game weeks, which is captaincy statistics for the top 10K, which is very important to pay attention to if you're there, because it's all well and good if people, ranked 2 million, 3 million are capturing these other people and gaining on you. But if you're losing points and losing ground to the people around you, obviously it's going to cost very, very quickly. So you have to be quite tactical in taking chances. You can't just have 2 or 3 punts. You've got to play the players with the high ownership, because if they score, if Jesus, for example, scores a hat-trick and you don't have them, everyone around is going to just soar up past you, basically. So you got to be tactical. Like your team, I suppose, you've got a few of the fundamentals. You've got Trent, you've got James, you've got Jesus, Haaland. So you can then take a punt on Grealish. But just understanding, I suppose, you can't do that for your whole team. You've got to be asking yourself, where are you vulnerable? Where can you lose ground? And then once you're set there, ask yourself, where can you gain ground? And then who with? And I think it's to do with the delta in XG and G. So anytime Kane goes below his XG, he always scores. He's always around his figure for XG. He's literally, it's almost like clockwork with him. Son, on the other hand, he often overperforms his XG because he kind of takes shots maybe from outside the box. Maybe he's not in those positions as often, but he scores. So being mindful of that, who's underperforming, who's overperforming. If a player is underperforming, they're actually bring them in and take a punt on them, basically. Last season, it was Richarlison. Richarlison massively was behind on his XG, so they actually said he'd score loads of goals, but he wasn't scoring them. And then suddenly, the last 3 weeks of the season, he kicked off, and I think he's got 3. He may got 4 and 3. But a lot of people did very well off him because his ownership was low. But the stats were there behind to prove that, to show that he was a good, viable asset. So yeah, I suppose understanding that and then seeing where you're vulnerable, but it's not too complicated.
Go on, Sean, you want to go in?
Yeah, this is just mind-boggling. I'm one of them that if everyone else has got Trent and James, I'm looking at someone like Nico Williams or someone just a little.
But it's Ciarán, it's funny, like you pick your battles, like you don't take on
Oh, never. Yeah, you're sound correct there. You're right. Like, never take on Mo Salah. Like, he's the most, and he says that himself. So put him comment on it. He says he's the best player, and he scores the most points every year, and he knows it. But no, never take on Mo Salah. I think I was cheeky enough to do it once last season. But he's just, even if he goes 7 games without scoring, like he'll score 4, and he takes penalties. Penalties is a huge, like penalties adds. If someone gets a penalty, it adds 0.75 to their XG, which is massive. For obvious reasons, like, so penalty takers are, you've got to have them in your team. So Salah is just pretty imperative. I know he's expensive, but he's worth it. His price point will probably go up. He'll probably end the season at like 13.6 maybe. So yeah, you don't go against him.
Yeah, I was chasing a lot last season, so I knew, as I said before I cut off, I knew I was making a mistake with Mo Salah. But it's some balls until the match that you're like, oh, I can't wait now, and then you watch that man just not even play well and score the 2-3 goals he needs. But yeah, Ciarán, been brilliant having you on. Thanks a mil for jumping on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, lads. Great to see the podcast back.
Yeah, we're back, Ciarán. And look, if this segment's ending to go by, we might have to get you on again to talk us through and keep people motivated to keep their FPL teams going. That's the issue. 4 million players to stop after week 1.
Perfect. Captain Salah. That's the only message. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Cheers, Ciarán. Sean, we're done. Any final things? Premier League preview. We've got the FPL preview then for those that want to give it a good go. The code for the Premier League, it will be out tomorrow. The league's already set up. I'll send on the code in a post tomorrow. Sean, any final thoughts on the Premier League? Looking forward to it?
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. And it is good to have, as I say, a couple of good Irish players to keep our eyes on as well, considering we lost Burnley last year, who normally obviously had a few. And yeah, it's always good to, obviously, as an Arsenal fan, start the new season, but I have a bad feeling about Elise, Eze and Zaha on the opening game of the season, and Patrick Vieira's Crystal Palace side, but it should be good.
And I have a bad feeling about the Amazon documentary tomorrow, so we'll have to sort out the Prime logins, get them ready. I presume it'll be out first thing in the morning, 9 o'clock. So I'd say eyes will be glued to it, and ours will be the jokes of all the butts of all jokes again. Thanks a mil for watching, tuning in. It's been a long one. At Tackling Sport, get us on social media. The FPL code for the league will be out tomorrow. You can win a Premier League jersey of your choice, and all we ask is you'd like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you get more sports content throughout the Premier League season and beyond. My thanks to Sean.
Cheers, Dan.
We'll be back on Monday. We'll do a review of the opening weekend of the Premier League, and we'll kick on from there. For now, take care. Enjoy the weekend football. The football's back. Bye-bye.